The cop killer who couldn't stop talking. So here's where we're starting. A man on death row. Already convicted. Already sentenced to die. And somehow, he makes everything worse for himself. Way worse. Like, we're not talking about a guy who got caught for a parking ticket. We're talking about a man who was already going to be executed, and still managed to rack up more victims from behind bars. Wild, right? Okay. Let me back up. Let's go to Columbus, Ohio. Summer of 2000. It's a regular August night. Officer Darnell Hayes is on duty. 34 years old, got a family at home. He pulls over a car. Routine stuff. And then, boom. Just like that, he's shot and killed. The shooter is a guy named Marcus Webb. He doesn't run far. Gets caught pretty quick. Now Marcus Webb is not exactly a mystery to law enforcement. He's got a record. He's been around. But nobody, and I mean nobody, knows the full picture of who this guy actually is yet. He goes to trial. Gets convicted of aggravated murder. The jury comes back with death. He's shipped off to death row at the Chillicothe Correctional Institution. Case closed, right? Yeah. Not even close. Here's where it gets weird. So Marcus is on death row. He's got time. A lot of time. And apparently what he decides to do with that time is write letters. Not letters to his family. Not letters to an attorney. Letters to investigators. Letters to detectives working cold cases. He starts inserting himself into investigations. Offering tips. Claiming he knows things. Acting like he's some kind of informant. And here's the thing, the reason this becomes a massive problem is because investigators start pulling the thread. They're like, okay, why does this guy know so much? Why is he volunteering all this information? So they start digging into Marcus Webb's past. Really digging. And what they find is horrifying. Let's go back. Way back. Before Officer Hayes. Before any of this. Marcus Webb had been living in the Columbus area for years before the shooting. Quiet enough to fly under the radar. But starting in the mid to late 1990s, women in certain neighborhoods start getting attacked. Raped. Assaulted. Cases that went unsolved. Victims who reported what happened but the attacker was never identified. You see where this is going. DNA had been collected in several of these cases. Just sitting in a database, waiting for a match. And when investigators finally ran Webb's DNA, the guy already on death row for murder, it started hitting. Over and over again. One match. Two matches. More. Marcus Webb wasn't just a cop killer. He was a serial rapist. Multiple victims. Multiple attacks. All before the night he shot Officer Hayes. The number of confirmed victims ended up being significant enough that prosecutors started filing additional charges. This man, already scheduled to die, was now also being held accountable for a string of sexual assaults he thought he'd gotten away with entirely. Now let's talk about the inserting himself part. Because that's the part that really gets me. When you're on death row, the smart move, if you can even call anything smart in that situation, is to keep your head down. Maybe appeal your case. Maybe pray. What you don't do is start reaching out to law enforcement like you're a consultant. But Marcus couldn't help himself. There are guys like this. They get off on being close to the investigation. They want to feel important. They want to feel like they're in control of something. So they write letters. They make calls. They drop hints. They act like they know things, because they do. Because they did them. It's this compulsion, they can't just sit there. They have to be involved. And every time Webb opened his mouth or picked up a pen, he was essentially waving a flag. Detectives noticed. Analysts noticed. And eventually, it all came crashing down on him. The victims. I want to pause here for a second because it's easy to get caught up in the twisted psychology of a guy like this and forget about the actual people he hurt. These were women going about their lives. Some attacked near their homes. Some grabbed in parking areas. All of them left to carry something that never fully goes away. And for years, they had no answers. No name. No face. No accountability. When the DNA hit started coming in, some of these women finally found out what happened. That there was a man. That he was identified. That he was already locked up. That had to be complicated. Because relief and horror can exist in the same moment. Back to Marcus Webb and his big mouth. So the additional charges get filed. Prosecutors now have him on the sexual assault cases on top of the murder conviction. Webb's legal situation, which was already about as bad as it gets, somehow got worse. He tried to play it off. The letters, the tips, the information he'd been sharing, he probably thought it made him look cooperative. Maybe even helpful. Like maybe it would be used in some kind of appeal. Like being an informant from death row would somehow soften the edges of his situation. It didn't. What it did was confirm what investigators suspected. It gave them more rope. More context. More reason to keep pulling that thread until everything unraveled. The trial and convictions. For the murder of Officer Darnell Hayes, Marcus Webb was convicted and sentenced to death in the state of Ohio. That verdict stood. For the serial rape cases, the charges that came later, the ones nobody even knew about until he started getting cute with investigators, he was convicted on multiple counts. Additional time stacked onto a sentence that already ended with lethal injection. Ohio takes cop killing seriously. Ohio takes serial rape seriously. Marcus Webb managed to catch maximum heat on both. Where things stand. As of the time of this story, Marcus Webb remains on death row in Ohio. Ohio's execution process has had legal delays and pauses over the years, debates over methods, court challenges, the usual machinery of death penalty litigation. So he's still alive. Still waiting. Which means he's had a lot of time to think about what happened. About the letters he wrote. About the DNA he didn't think would ever catch him. About the night he shot a cop and set all of this in motion. Here's what I keep coming back to. He was already caught. Already convicted. Already going to die. The sexual assault cases might have stayed cold forever. His victims might never have gotten any kind of answer. But he couldn't just be still. He had to stay in the game. Had to keep talking. Had to insert himself into things that were moving without him. And that's the thing about guys like this. They think they're the smartest person in the room. Even when they're in a cell. Even when they're already on a list with a date next to their name. They just can't stop. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, that's exactly what gets them caught all over again.